Okay, so there's the camshaft gear and the timing chain itself, and you can see where it come off up there. Okay, now we're assembling this special tool to remove the crankshaft sprocket. I actually went and ordered all of these off eBay, and can tell you once I'm done I'm going to be selling them again if you're looking for ones, although I had to order them all individually. So what I'm going to show you here is we start off with number 3, which is special tool A450, which was this little guy. He was about 10 bucks. It says Miller 8450 on it. You may not be able to see that, but it's just a little piece that goes in the end of the crankshaft. And then we have these 2 shells. They are Miller tool number 8539. They're 2 halves. It says Miller 8539 on there. And there are 2 halves to a little shell. We have this guy, which is number 2 in the diagram, Miller tool 5048-1. Anyway, so it's kind of etched into there, 5048-1. I'm sure you can see that. And then we have this little guy, which is 5048-6, which is a little cup that just sort of holds everything together. So we're going to go and try fitting this on there and see if we can get it to work. Tool assembled on the sprocket. I've got a crescent wrench there. There's some flats. Okay, you can see as she cranks down on here, you can see it just pulling the sprocket right off of there. Okay, so we're now putting the crankshaft new sprocket back on here. So we've got the tool here. It comes pretty much fully assembled. Okay, so we stopped for just a moment. Once we got the new sprocket on and took the we took it back, the tool back off of there, we noticed that the little arrow had moved slightly, so it was pointing to probably, what would you say, about 2 o'clock? 1 to 2 o'clock somewhere. It had just moved slightly, even though we'd been holding the crankshaft steady so that it wouldn't turn. It had turned just a little bit, so we were able to actually just reach in and grab one of the bearings on the bottom of the piston there and just kind of move the engine back just by hand, because we have all the spark plugs out. There's no resistance on it, so we got it to where it's back to pointing straight up. And the thing we did, we didn't take a video of, there's a little plate there you can see that goes around the camshaft. We got a new one in the kit. It came with the new camshaft sprocket. So here's the old one off, and we put the new one on there. It just had 2 little 10mm bolts held on. We're about to put the new chain on and the new sprocket on the camshaft. So if I can get in here, we're checking that the timing marks are aligned correctly. So we have an arrow down there on the bottom, and then we have a arrow up at the top, and we're making sure with a straight edge that they're lined up perfectly. Okay, and you can see the plated link that's a different color is lined up with the dot on the sprocket on both of them. So you can see up there, there's a dot on that one, and we're lined up. And there's a dot on the bottom one, we're lined up there. Our arrows are pointing at each other. That means we're still perfectly in time, and that's what we want to see. On it, where the gasket goes up against here, it was just caked on hard, pretty much glued to the actual block. It was really hard to get off of there. We first tried some spray. It was the only thing they carried in any of the stores locally, which was a low VOC gasket remover spray from Permatex. You can see the bottle there. Don't bother, it doesn't work. It basically would not eat out any of the gasket at all. So the next thing we tried was with a razor blade. I know you really shouldn't use it on aluminum for fear of gouging it, but really had no other choice. And that really wasn't doing a lot because the gasket is so hard. So the last thing we tried were these plastic chisels. Come from Napa Auto Parts, about 15 bucks, and came in a 2-pack. And that proved the most effective thing. We were able to put it up against the the block there and just use a hammer to tap on that chisel, and it was breaking the gasket off in pieces, and so we're just getting big chunks of it coming off. And then we went back and had to actually sharpen that little chisel a little bit, so I took a file to the end of it just to keep making it go back to a point, because with being plastic it just was getting dull real quickly. So just kept filing it and chiseling away at the gasket on there until it came off. Still left a little bit of a paper on there after we did that, so I went back with a brand new very sharp razor blade and just went over it very carefully to get just those last little bits off. It seems like there might be a few light scratches in there that just were unavoidable. Hopefully we don't have any leak points because of that. Don't like that, but you know, really we did the absolute best we could trying to get that off of there. And actually I see one tiny little bit of the gasket left. You see that hole there down to the right of it. There's a little bit of orange on there, so I want to get that off. We'll scrape that and get that off, and make sure that's completely clean before we put the new gasket back on there. We also put a new hose on here, this heater hose. You'll see right there. Had to cut the old one to get it off. It was so old and just in really bad shape, so it's 5/8 heater hose. Got a new one of those to replace. And so we cleaned all this up. Unfortunately, I would recommend scraping your gasket off before you take the timing chain off, because what happens was it just kind of flaked off a lot of pieces of that gasket, and it was getting down in the gear and the new chain I just put on. I said, ugh, I'm not taking it back off. Took compressed air and really blew it out good, and sprayed over it with some brake cleaner, and then went back and blew it out again just to make sure I got all the pieces out. Since we went over it with brake cleaner to clean it all off, went back and re-oiled the chain up. You can see it kind of glistening now, so it's got fresh engine oil on it, so it's nice and lubricated for when we first started up. Let's see, what else did we do? We cleaned off the actual cover itself. Same process, we just scraped that down real well and got that nice and clean. Now that it's clean, we put the new gasket on it. The manual says to adhere the gasket but not to use sealant. I actually decided that we should call Felpro and ask them how to do that, what they recommended. And they said this product here, which I got from Napa, which is high-tack gasket sealant. It says sealant, but it's basically a super strong cement, really sticky stuff, and use that to paint the gasket on one side and then stick it here on the cover so that it'll stay in place when we go to put the case on there, and make sure that it doesn't move and go anywhere on us when we first put it on there. So as you can see, we've got this all cleaned up. It's adhered on there. It's not really moving much. It's got a little wiggle room to it, which is good, but it's not going to just fall off in my hands. One other thing I put it on, the oil seal. This is the old one. Was on the front of the cover. What we did is just took a little screwdriver, a little flathead screwdriver there, and just we got the cover back on. We had numbered our bolts, so we knew exactly which ones went where. Torqued those down. The ones with the largest size head, which are 15mm, were all torqued to 40 foot-pounds, and then the ones that are smaller, I think 13mm head, all went to 20 foot-pounds, so those are all on. Then the next step that we just did was put the oil seal on. I ordered the special tool for that. Kind of a simple thing, though. You could probably improvise this on your own. It's got a piece of pipe here that kind of gets wider on one end, a little narrower on the other end. That goes here over top of the crankshaft. Then you put the new seal on with the spring side facing towards the inside. And then it's got just a little piece here that just fits perfectly over it. Tap it a few times with a hammer on the end, and voila, the new seal is in there and flush with the cover. So now that that's done, we're going to put the water pump back on, just kind of continuing the reassembly in the same order we took it apart. Okay, we're definitely getting closer here. We put the water pump back on. That was pretty uneventful. Nothing special to note there, just kind of reverser removal. Same with the power steering pump. Put it back on. Only thing that happened with us is it feels like one of the bolts is getting rounded off on that, so I just hope I never have to take that back off. You need to raise the engine back up when you put the power steering pump on, otherwise it's really hard to get to the bolt holes on that. And the engine needs to be lowered all the way down to do the water pump, so kind of have to go a little bit up and down, up and down. I've got it raised at the moment because we're actually going to put the bracket on right after we do this, but right now we're putting the harmonic balancer right back on the crankshaft here. So I've got my special tool, which is this long screw, this big forcing nut, and then you've got a little bearing in there. It's the same tool we used to put the, see if I can get enough light in here, same tool we used when we put the sprocket there on the crankshaft earlier. It had an extra piece on it to do that. You don't need that extra piece to do this part. So you can see that set up there, and I'm going to crank that down. We put on the camshaft position sensor, which is, probably can't see too well because of the lighting here. It's straight back down there. You can see the little bit of colored wires. It's kind of resting down there. But the key to putting it in is it comes, the new one, with a little paper little dot that goes on the end of it, on the tip. That has to stay on there. It gives you a little spacer, and according to the instructions that just gets sheared off when you first start the engine, and I guess it ends up in the oil filter or somewhere down in the oil pan afterwards. So that needs to be on there when you reinstall it. So if you're reusing the same one, you want to make sure that you get a new one of those little dots. I bought one from the Chrysler dealership locally. It was I'm going to say $4 or $5 for that silly little paper dot. But then when I went to take the old one off, if you remember earlier in the video, the little kind of ear, I called it, the little piece on the edge where it attaches to the block, cracked and broke off. So I had to throw the old sensor away. Didn't get to use that little paper dot that I bought. The new sensor came with one on it. It just had in the instructions to push down on it and hold it down against the chain when you tighten it down, and kind of keep holding it until you've got the bolt on there tight. So the job is all done now. I've got the engine running. Notice we're not hearing that rattling sound anymore. Still got a little bit of a belt choke, which the vehicle's always had. I'm not really sure what's causing it, but just kind of a normal engine sound. Much quieter than it was. We've driven it, and it runs quite a bit smoother, and seems to make a pretty good difference in the way the van operates. But not hearing that rattling sound, except for very faintly occasionally, but it made a huge difference in the volume of what we're hearing. I'm going to put it down here in the wheel well so you can hear from that angle. Consider that a successful job. Hopefully this is helpful to do it on your own. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments, and I'd be glad to help.